Welcome to the Duskmourn rules video. My name is Nelson.
And I'm Serge. We're here to introduce and explain the new and returning mechanics in the set.
Room cards are similar to split cards, except they're permanents. Each room has two halves called doors. Pick one when you cast it, and that door unlocks on the battlefield. You can later pay mana to unlock the other door and get access to both sides. Even though room cards are permanents with two faces, they're only one card. If an effect counts the number of enchantments in your graveyard, a room only counts once. To cast a room spell, choose one half, or door, to cast. When the spell resolves, the room you selected becomes unlocked as it enters. The characteristics of the door you didn't cast are ignored while the spell is on the stack. There's no way to cast both halves at the same time. Anytime you have priority during a main phase of your turn and the stack is empty, you may pay the mana cost of a locked door, also called its unlock cost. That door becomes unlocked. This is a special action. It doesn't use the stack and can't be responded to. There are abilities that trigger when you unlock this door. This can happen one of two ways. 1, the door becomes unlocked on the battlefield, or 2, the door becomes unlocked as the room enters the battlefield because you cast the corresponding half. In the latter case, since the door becoming unlocked is what causes the ability to trigger, effects that cause abilities that trigger when a permanent enters to trigger an additional time, such as that of Panharmonicon, won't apply. Some abilities allow you to unlock a door of a room you control. You can't choose to unlock a door that's already unlocked. If such an ability requires a target, you can target a room even if both of its doors are unlocked, but the ability won't do anything when it resolves. Similarly, some abilities allow you to lock a door of a room you control. You can't choose to lock a door that's already locked. If such an ability requires a target, you can target a room even if both of its doors are locked, but the ability won't do anything when it resolves. If a room enters from any zone other than the stack, it will enter with both halves locked, in which case it's a room enchantment with no name and no abilities. The rooms can still be unlocked. If an effect allows you to cast a spell with certain characteristics, consider only the characteristics of the door you're casting. While in any zone other than the stack or the battlefield, a room card's characteristics are a combination of its two doors.
What's the scariest thing in horror? Is it the obvious jump scare, or the dread you experience when you know something is coming and you can't do anything to stop it? Impending N cost means you may choose to pay cost rather than pay the spell's mana cost. If you do, it enters with N time counters on it. As long as this permanent has a time counter on it, if it was cast for its impending cost, it's not a creature. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter. Then, if it has no time counters on it, it loses impending. To be clear, it enters the battlefield as a permanent, and as long as it has a time counter, is not a creature. This means that the overlords are always enchantments and can be interacted with as such. Impending is still casting a spell. It goes on the stack and can be responded to, countered, and so on. If an object enters as a copy of a permanent that was cast with its impending cost, it won't enter with time counters, and it will be a creature.
Manifest is a mechanic first introduced in Fate Reforged and seen as recently as Modern Horizons 3. Manifest Dread is a new, spooky adaptation of that mechanic. Here's how it works. To manifest Dread, look at the top two cards of your library. Manifest one by putting it onto the battlefield face down, and put the other into your graveyard. The card you put onto the battlefield becomes a 2/2 face-down creature with no name, mana cost, creature types, or abilities. It's colorless and has a mana value of 0. Anytime you have priority, you can turn a manifested permanent you control face up by revealing that it's a creature card and paying its mana cost. This is a special action, doesn't use the stack, and can't be responded to. If it's not a creature card, I've got bad news. No flipping it. Sorry. You can look at a face-down spell or permanent you control at any time. You can't look at face-down cards your opponent controls unless an effect allows you to do so. Because the permanent is already on the battlefield, turning a permanent face-up doesn't cause enter the battlefield abilities to trigger. Turning a permanent face-up changes its characteristics, but it's otherwise the same permanent. It doesn't change if it's tapped or untapped. Any counters, equipment, and auras that were attached to it remain attached.
Survival is an ability that rewards creatures for making it through combat tapped, and most importantly, still alive. Survival abilities trigger at the beginning of the second main phase you take in a turn. If you somehow have an effect that gives you additional phases, they won't trigger. The creature being tapped is crucial to the ability resolving. If a creature with a survival ability isn't tapped when your second main phase begins, the ability won't trigger at all. You can hilariously untap a survival creature in response to the triggered ability to deny that ability. If a survival ability is on the stack and the creature leaves the battlefield, use its last known tapped or untapped status to determine whether the ability does anything.
Eerie is a new ability word, a thematic ability that isn't mechanically unique, but appears enough to get its own name, like Landfall. Eerie abilities will trigger whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield and whenever you fully unlock a room. One rules note though, if a permanent with an Eerie ability enters at the same time as one or more enchantments, its ability will trigger for each of those enchantments.
Another returning ability word is Delirium. It represents abilities that require 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. The card types in Magic are Artifact, Battle, Creature, Enchantment, Instant, Kindred, Land, Planeswalker, and Sorcery. Legendary, Basic, and Snow are super types, not card types. Horror and Room are subtypes, not card types. A single card can contribute multiple card types for the purposes of Delirium. Some instants and sorceries with Delirium abilities have an upgraded effect when they resolve, or a modified cost as they're cast if there are 4 or more card types amongst cards in your graveyard. They check that number only while they're resolving or cast respectively and don't count themselves since they aren't in your graveyard yet. Some, but not all, triggered Delirium abilities use an intervening if clause. There must be 4 or more card types amongst cards in your graveyard in order for these abilities to trigger. Otherwise, they won't trigger at all. There's no way to have the ability trigger if there aren't enough card types, even if you intend to raise that number in response to the triggered ability. The number of card types is checked again as the trigger resolves, and if that number has become too low, the ability does nothing.
That's it for the rules.
Thank you for watching.